So I'm Brandie Nonnecke. I work at CITRIS in the Banatow Institute, which is one of the largest organized research units within the University of California system. We are headquartered at UC Berkeley, but we operate also on the campuses of UC Davis, UC Merced, and UC Santa Cruz. On this slide, you can see a summary of our main areas of expertise and the programs that we've developed. You'll see the CITRIS Policy Lab listed here under Technology and Society. CITRIS and the Banatow Institute has about 450 principal investigators and faculty who are associated with us. And so I work with them to translate their empirical research into deliverables that can inform tech policy for the public and private sector. So right now, I'm also a fellow at the Carr Center for Human Rights Policy. I was previously a fellow at the Aspen Institute and at the World Economic Forum. You can see my email down below and my Twitter handle if you want to follow me. If you have any questions about today's tutorial, please feel free to shoot me an email. For the CITRIS Policy Lab, we support technology, policy, research, and engagement in the interest of society. Our goal really is to support interdisciplinary research collaboration to better ensure that policymaking in the tech space, in the public and private sector, is done in a way that maximizes societal benefits and mitigates harms. Here's just a summary of some of our core research areas. Today, I'm going to focus on some of our research in the computational propaganda space, which is the use of AI and automation to influence public opinion on social media. We also lead quite a few research projects on inclusive AI. So how do we better design and deploy AI-enabled technologies that maximize societal benefit? In that space, we have an ongoing collaboration with the California Department of Technology to help guide the state's procurement, development, implementation, and monitoring of AI systems. Here's just a few of some of our recent publications. You can check out our reports at this URL. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that we've done on computational propaganda. So as I said before, computational propaganda is the use of AI and automation to influence public opinion on social media. On the left is a screenshot of the front page of one of our recent reports, where we looked at the use of Twitter bots to target women's reproductive rights issues before the 2018 midterm elections and looked at their goals and tactics. So when bots were deployed and they were clearly targeting women's reproductive rights issues, what were they trying to do? And in our research, you can see we pulled 1.7 million tweets from about 465,000 handles. Obviously, that's a lot of data. I'm going to show you today how to pull some data. I'm not going to pull that many tweets. I'm just going to pull a small sample to show you. But I can also talk about the methodology that we used because, looking at 1.7 million tweets, where do you even begin to analyze that? There's no way, unless you do some automated coding, qualitative coding, it's incredibly difficult to really parse out signals from noise. But I'll talk here on the next slide about the methodology that we used. So we really looked at the role of bots in spreading disinformation before the election, harassment, and perpetuating political divisiveness as a means to try to influence voting behavior. And we studied both sides, pro-life, bot accounts, and pro-choice. Now, when we started this research, we were very conscientious to use hashtags that encompassed both sides of the debate. And then we analyzed how bots were being deployed across those different groups. Okay, here you can see, this is a social network analysis. So we took our, millions of tweets and we put them into Gephi, which is an open source platform. Feel free to chime in though too. You can, this is a kind of a working group. There's only 48 of us. So, raise your hand if you've ever used Gephi before. But Gephi allows you to perform a social network analysis, and you can do a retweet analysis. You can see how many people are retweeting and the connections, or a mention analysis, which accounts are the most commonly mentioned in a network. And by doing that, you can see and try to figure out the virality or the influence of an account through a network. And in order for us to be able to better analyze our data to figure out where to begin in the over 1 million tweets, we performed social network analysis, and we identified the most influential accounts in the network through a retweet network analysis, with the idea that those accounts that are being retweeted a lot, their messages are going out into the network a lot more. They have greater virality. And out of those accounts, we ran them through Indiana University's Botometer, which is a platform for analyzing whether or not an account is exhibiting bot-like behavior. And Botometer has a set of variables that it considers. I think maybe a dozen or so. I have to look again, but they have a few variables that they'll look at to see, is this exhibiting the behavior that, according to our model, would suggest it's a bot. Now, of course, there are false positives and false negatives. Sometimes they flag an account as a bot, but it's really not. And sometimes they don't flag an account that is a bot. I also want to mention that we have this perception that bots are inherently bad. And oftentimes they are, right? They have a malicious intent. But I think we should also be conscientious that not all bot accounts are bad. So sometimes, like I know some bot accounts that will retweet work of women scholars in AI ethics to help spread their work to a wider audience. So bot detection, I think, is one really great way to try to parse out and see what effect are those accounts having in the network. And then we also actually did qualitative coding on the tweets that came from our most influential bot accounts. And you can see here we had a breakdown of pro-choice and pro-life. We actually read every single tweet and coded it for whether or not it contained harassing language, hate speech, or political divisiveness. And you can see some of those figures here. But today we're going to get into the really fun stuff. So the Twitter API. And here's just a summary of Twitter's application programming interface, is what API stands for. And this is sort of like a bridge for you to gain access to Twitter's database, which is great that they've set this up to allow researchers and third parties to gain access to their data. On a side note, I'm doing additional research on a growing trend among platform companies to restrict data access to third parties, which I think is extremely problematic. Mostly because I think that it shields those companies from transparency and accountability. And unfortunately, they're using nascent data privacy legislation like the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, or in California, we have the California Consumer Privacy Act and also the California Privacy Rights Act. They are using these laws to say, in the interest of saving upholding the privacy and security of our users, we feel uncomfortable sharing data with third parties. And to me, that's very problematic, because then we don't know what's happening on the platforms, right? How would we know how Twitter was used before the January 6th Capitol insurrection if we didn't have access to the data? And so I really hope that the platforms keep their APIs open and they don't restrict the types of data that they have been giving, which they have been restricting over the past few years, the types of data that they'll share. I just want to flag that as an issue that I hope you all consider. And so you can see here in their version 2 of their API, you can look up tweets. If users search for recent tweets, you can sample real-time streaming tweets, which I think is particularly relevant to our discussion today on conflict early warning. And you can also engage with Twitter through the API. You can actually build apps that will allow you to tweet or retweet, developing a bot account. So you can have these interaction dynamics going to the platform rather than just pulling tweets. But today we're just going to pull some tweets. I have here, this is the Twitter developer page, and I just wanted to show you quickly, look at all of the different tutorials that are available. So I recommend that you save this URL at the top, because if you have any questions about, I'd really like to be able to pull tweets in real time on a certain hashtag, well, there's going to be a tutorial here for you. And exactly, I wanted to highlight that one, that you can stream tweets in real time. with the new Twitter API version 2. So in order to get started and being able to pull tweets from Twitter's API, you must have a developer license. And you can apply for a developer license by going to this URL. I have all of these URLs saved in a text file, and I can throw them in the chat in a minute, so you don't have to try to copy this down. This can take a little bit of time. It can take a few weeks. You have to explain what you're going to be using the API for. And when I applied for my developer license, there were a few email exchanges, like 3 or 4, that I had to go through before I was approved for a developer license. So just make sure that you budget enough time to be able to get your developer license. So today I'm going to be showing how to use Python, which is a programming language, to be able to pull tweets from Twitter's API. And in our Python code, we're going to be installing Tweepy, which is an open source Python package. It allows you to access Twitter's API and pull data. It's beautiful. It makes it really simple. And then also Pandas, which is a data manipulation and management tool. So by installing Pandas, we're going to be able to pull the tweets from Twitter's API, use Pandas to formulate it and export it into a beautiful CSV file with columns that are all labeled and organized. So it makes life very easy. If you want to type in this URL, this will go to the Twitter API tutorial that I've put together and that I will be going through today. I believe that there's 7 steps in the tutorial. And if you have your developer license, you can go ahead and follow along with me. So actually, first, let's go to our tutorial. Okay, so you should be able to see this. It might not be, the text might not be very big, but here, let me throw this in the, I share in chat when I'm sharing screen. Here. Cool, thank you, Karen. Way to go, super helpful. Thank you, Karen, that's cool. Okay, so Karen already shared the link, it's in there. Okay, so, okay, the reason why I developed this tutorial was that all the tutorials I could find were really unclear. They weren't super simple. And I thought, why isn't there just a super simple tutorial? And so I hope that I've achieved that with this, and that you can go through this and just be able to figure it out and pull tweets like a pro in no time. So step 1, like I said, you have to apply for Twitter developer license and obtain credentials. So you can apply here. There's your developer account. So we're actually going to go on there, and I've logged in and logged into my account. You can see right here, I just saw someone. Okay, for those who just joined, there's the tutorial we're going over. So we're going to go over here to projects and apps, an overview, and we need to create an app. The app is going to allow us to pull tweets from Twitter's API. So let's give it a name. Let's say tweet. Oh, that name very taken. Twitter Berkeley. Okay. So now I want to go. Okay, when you're gaining access to the, in order for you to communicate through the API, it's going to give you a set of keys and tokens. Now, these are just generated for you. You should not share them with anybody else. Don't share them with anybody else. Don't do what I'm doing today. I'm going to show you my keys and tokens today, but then I'm going to disable them in the account, which I'm trying to use them. Because then it'll be like you're accessing Twitter from my account, which isn't cool. So I will deactivate them afterwards, but yeah, don't use anybody else's keys or tokens, just generate your own. So we have the API key, API secret key. So we're going to need those in our Python code. So let me copy it. Here's the API key. We need the API secret key. Okay, and then to get our access token and access token secret, we are going to need to go to settings, keys and tokens, and they're here. So here is my access token. I'm going to copy that over. And access token secret. Okay. So let's save those for later because we're going to need them. So now let's go back to the tutorial. We have obtained our license and our credentials. Now you need to make sure you copy over all of that information, the API key, the secret key, the token, and the token secret, because we're going to need those. Now on your machine, this tutorial is geared toward Mac users. You should already have Python pre-installed. You can check your current version of Python through your terminal, which I could show if you all need me to show later. But also if you have a PC, you can download Python. So step 3 is to install a code editor. You can use like just your text edit, but I like code editors better because they do coloring, which I will show you in a second. I love to use Sublime Text. It's free, so you can download that there. And then we show you all. So I have Sublime Text here. Now, by default, I don't know if it's just on mine, but the syntax is not in Python when I start. So you want to make sure that your syntax is in Python. So you would go view syntax. Yeah, it's in plain text. So go view syntax and then Python. Okay. Now we need to create a folder on our desktop for this project. So let's go, actually, let's just do it right from the desktop. You can see. Okay, so we have a new folder. Let's call it tweet poll. Okay. So now we're going to want to save this Python file into that tweet poll folder. So let's do file, save them. And it's in Python. So let's also call this one tweet poll.python. We want to make sure it's saved in the tweet poll folder. Save. Okay. So it should be in there. You can also see it's in the Python language, and you can also see the logo there just as a double check. Great. Okay. So we have our new file. We've saved it as Python. Now we're going to open up the terminal and set up a virtual environment. And essentially, we're using our terminal to communicate with the API. And so you actually will right-click on your folder, which on a Mac, that's just control-click, and then say New Terminal at Folder. Okay, so here's your terminal. We want to make sure, though, that this terminal is running from that folder. So we're going to type in pwd, which is print working directory. We're just going to double check. Yep, look, it's in the right one. It's in our desktop, and it's in the tweet poll folder. So we're good to go. Okay, now we're going to set up a virtual environment. So we want to type Python 3, the virtual environment, and then you wait. And when it calls back, you see this space, you know that it's gone through. So now we want to activate that virtual environment. So these are all written here. Here's the next one, source. virtual environment, bin, activate. And then now you can see it's changed from base to virtual environment. So we know we're good to go. Don't close your terminal window. Always keep it open because that's where you're using the call to the API. So now we want to copy over the Python code that I've shared via GitHub. Actually, click on that. I already have it here. Let me just show you something quickly that I did. So here you can see the code. Now to make it really super easy to copy and paste, just go to the raw and it's like, oh, command copy, okay? And then now it's that in, see how it's all lit up? Now before when our syntax was in plain text, it wouldn't have been lit up like this. It makes it so easy to see. And you can actually write in notes with these quote marks. You can see and read some of the notes that I've put in. Okay, so now we need to paste in our tokens and keys. Okay, so we're working in Sublime Text in our Python code. We take our API key, one, and then secret key. That's a secret if I'm sharing it with 70 some people. And then it's a token. And okay, and then save. So do Command S, or you can do a file save up here, but you need to save after every time you change your code in order for it to work. Okay, so let's just go over this a little bit to show you what's going on here. So at the beginning, I have it print out just a message so I know that it's working, and I'm like, why not send myself an uplifting message? You got this. So you'll see that in the report out in our terminal that it'll be working. And then we have, we're using Tweepy as a way to pull the tweets from API. Remember, we installed, actually, I don't know if we installed Tweepy yet. We haven't. That's something we need to do. Something we skip. Okay, skip. So let's install Tweepy and install pandas. Okay, so we want pip3 install Tweepy. There, came back, so that worked. Now pip3 install pandas, which is our data frame. That's how we're going to pull the data into a beautiful CSV file. Wait, this one takes a little bit. Okay, there we go. We're good to go. Okay, we have our Python code. We have our access tokens, the consumer key, the consumer secret key. We're all good there. Okay, now the next thing to do here, we need to change out the file directory here. This is how we're going to pull this data into a CSV file. Now, if you look here, you can see we're going to be pulling when the tweet was created at, the tweet ID, the text of the tweet, the screen name of the handle, the person's name that they put in, or the entity's name, when the user created their account, and any URLs associated with that tweet, which will include the URL to the tweet and any URLs contained within the tweet. And here you can see that I'm pulling from my account. So we can start with that. You can also change this out for a hashtag. So let's say you wanted to do, I don't know, hashtag ethical aid. You could run it as well. But let's go ahead and just do my tweets and see what happens. I wrote this code last year, so let's just change it to 2021. I'm changing the date here, but honestly, it really doesn't matter because it's going to pull from the last 7 days of data anyway. I'll at least make it this year. Okay, so everything on here should be good. We can say save, except for we need to change out the path. So remember in the terminal, you can print the working directory, pwd, and there is our path. See that? Put this here. And then we need to give a new file name. So let's make the file name Tweetful. Okay, so all of our code should be good. Does anybody have any questions on the code they want to flag up before we run? Okay. Oh, I see someone has their hand raised. You can go ahead and unmute yourself if you can.
Hi, just wondering on line line 33, line 32, sorry, you converted everything to a tuple. Was that to eliminate duplicates before you put it back on the list?
I think so, yes. Some of this is pulled from like other people's
Okay.
Python that they wrote.
Any list there, you're gonna delete any duplicates there. So if that was your intention, I understand. But then to put in the list on line 33. Okay, I was just wondering what the reason for that was, and then to put it back on the list. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay. All right, let's see here. So now let's run this. So we're going to go. Okay, so now we go to here. I'm going to type Python, and then the name of our file. Support. Let's wait for it. Okay, so then now when we look in this folder, oh, look, what a beautiful file. We have created at the tweet ID, the tweet text, screen name of the person tweeting, their name, account creation date, and any URLs contained. Now RT means that that's a retweet account. You can sort those out later, and then you can see others where they would have tweets. So I have not been very active in the past week, you can see. Okay, so there's some other things we can do, but I'd like to pause and see if there are any questions about that. And then I can show you, how do you pull from a hashtag? You can add data here, like you can add retweet count for each tweet. Okay, what questions do you have? Oh, it's a good question. Okay, I'm not sure if Panda has this service, but what do you recommend for geospatial visualization of tweets to connect to this platform? I mean, like almost like a social network analysis, like how to, like, maybe Richard, unmute yourself.
Yes. So, yeah, thank you. So if I'm collecting all of these tweets, I guess what I'm curious now is whether there is a service that you would recommend that connects pretty easily with what you're introducing here that allows me to sort of overlay using the geolocation coordinates of a tweet onto a map in a live, perhaps in a live streaming way. But if that's not necessarily available, at least something that you've used personally that you would recommend if you have used a geospatial information system.
Yeah, I don't actually, but we've tried to do this in the past and we've found that we haven't tried to do the visualization, but tried to pull. So you're trying to say where the tweets are coming from.
Yes. Trying to get a spatial location.
That data is hard to get because usually, people can opt in, right, to say like tweeted from this location, but that's very uncommon. So you'll have a lot of tweets that don't have that information. And then, you know, also your data might be skewed then because only certain types of people or groups tweeting about certain things are willing to geotag, like use the location tagging. And then also what you can also get a report of where the person's location is, but that is oftentimes nonsense. People write like seat 13A on an airplane, which I think people think is clever, but we see it a lot. Or like somewhere over the rainbow is their location. So unfortunately, I think that there's a lot of noise in that data, which would make it hard to do a robust visualization of where tweets are coming from.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, what other questions do people have? I can ask all of you questions. How many of you have pulled tweets before from Twitter's API? Like, you can raise your hand. Throw it in the chat. How many of you are interested? Like after this, you're going to try. Oh, Nina, do you have a question? Oh, cool. I can see some people. Okay, feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question. Diogo? Okay, some people are very new to this. Yeah, no, it's not as hard as you would think it is, I think. I used to think that it's a really complicated process, and honestly just got tired of relying on other people to do it. So then I looked up a bunch of tutorials and learned how to do it. And I hope I can inspire others to be able to do it directly themselves. Here, Diogo, would you like to ask your question? I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, sorry, it was just to say that I did want to learn how to do tweeting, but I've never actually done it.
How to pull the tweets, yeah. I can show you all how to pull from a hashtag too, if that's of interest. Are there any other questions about the process?
Do you mind if I just answer one of the issues that come only because I've dealt with this so much?
Please, yeah, feel free.
The gentleman, I think it was Richard, that asked about geolocation. What you said is correct. Each Twitter user is able to opt out of geolocation. It's still being tracked, of course, by Twitter proper, but they don't show it to you. About a third of the time, roughly half the time, we found there is some geolocation in there. Now, it's notoriously unreliable and used as a spoof thing. So that's one factor. The other thing is it's often put in friendly logic. So it won't say the exact, it won't say, for example, the lat long of New York. It'll say, you know, at 123 Main Street or whatever. But you can go to the Google reverse geolocation thing and get they'll sign up for an account there. At the levels we do it, you'll never be charged anything. You have to sign up for you know, to be charged for it, but you will never be charged unless you use some staggeringly high number, which I never came close to reaching. In any event, that does reverse geolocation and will find the location of those tweets where the address is given. So I hope that helps Richard there and others who might be interested in there. So you can find out this stuff, but there's a bunch of steps and you have to reverse geolocate it to do it. Thanks.
Thank you. That was very helpful. I'm curious in your own research if you found that certain types of, like, is there a bias in those accounts that are willing to share their geolocation?
Yes, that's a very good question. It's frankly those who want to be associated with them. So often you'll have government spokespeople. And that now there's other factors that you can use to isolate it, even for people that don't want it to be. In the kind of work that I do, we're often tracking what expats who are social media users outside of a country, say, who commenting on an upcoming election or some sort of contentious political issue. We're very interested whether they're inside or outside of the country, and there's other ways to apply to that. But you know, there's limitations to how far the Twitter API is going to get you without secondary work. But it's there. It's worth the effort. You can learn a lot. So
thank you. That's helpful. Any other questions? I can show you all how to pull with a hashtag. So we're just super easy, super easy. Okay, so we can just change out, like I showed before, be like hashtag ethical AI, say, save. And then in our terminal, you would type again, run Python, and then tweet that Python. And it should replace my file with an updated file that is now all tweets associated with ethical AI. And there we are. There we have it. You can see it in this pulled back from the past 7 days. This is the default. It's going to go back 7 days. You can see all the tweets. And then let's say you want to add in retweet count. Let's say you want to see, I don't know, I say this with some hesitation, but the virality of a tweet by looking at the number of times it's retweeted, which is not always a measure for virality, but let's just say you want to know how many times a tweet has been retweeted. So then a little cheat here. So you can add the tweet retweet count. Here's the data. And then you want to also add this retweet count, your columns. So right here, it's going to throw it into your columns. You need to make sure that you have a column listed for that. These are your data. Essentially, this is the data you're pulling, and then you're saying, put this into this column. And we save. And then now when we run the Python again, and then name, tweet poll. Python and then tweet poll. Python. Yeah. What's really cool, it should have. Now look, it has your retweet count here in the first column. So you could sort and see, you know, like which ones are retweeted the most. So we went through the tutorial pretty fast. We still have like 20 minutes left, so I'd love to have this more hands-on. If you have questions or you want to talk through an idea, let's hear it. But I will let you unmute yourselves. I'm going to stop screen sharing for the moment. Okay, here from Irene. What would you recommend to get all the tweets related to violent incidents of a particular location or area? Actually, I wonder, I don't know what your first name is, S. Davis, since you work more on the geolocation stuff, I haven't worked very much in that space. Would you like to answer?
sure, I'll jump in. For that one there, it's probably best to look in some tutorials. It's actually Yahoo has some geolocation areas around the world where you can specify it's tweets coming from, I'm talking about Twitter here, tweets, not other social media. I want to be clear about that. We're just talking about Twitter here, from specific areas. You can also mark off a lat long box. So you do the northwest corner to the southeast corner of any dimensions you want, and it will only look for tweets that originate, not go to, but come from those lat long areas. And that's all part of the API, the Twitter API. I use it with R as well. So there's another package, but it gets you in the same location. I'm a fan of Tweepy. Ultimately, I like this package better because you see the most elementary parts of the code. There's no layers between you and it. So I think it's the best one to work with. Anyway, for geolocation, again, I think I put my email there. Anyone has any questions, I'm happy to help you. Not that I'm an expert, but only that I pulled my hair out over this stuff for months and got there. So maybe I could save you some time. I put my email on the list. Please feel free to ask if I can help you, like geo questions or any other, and I will shut my mouth.
No, you're very helpful, and it's good to learn from your experience. And I don't work a lot in geolocation data. Nina, I think you have a question.
Yeah, thank you. This is really helpful. My question is partly related. Is it at least is it at least possible to limit the search to particular countries, to particular account that are registered in particular countries? You were talking about the kind of US elections and so on. That is a bit easier than going through the geolocation stuff.
Yeah, I think in the API you can search by country. So in the list of all the links I sent you, the last one, tweet lookup, this is on the developer side of Twitter. Like, you can look to see what fields you can query for in the API. I haven't searched for country. There's so many geolocation questions. I feel like S. Davis, have you done that? Have you looked up from?
I'm happy to help. Again, I'm no pro here. I just pulled my hair out over this. There are location fields that often refer to the country. They'll give you some more specific, say the capital, and others sometimes smaller towns. It would be helpful, and I'd encourage everything. This is a great API. I mean, a great tutorial here to follow along what our instructor, and then pull out one feed and just say, okay, what are the possible API that are offered and available, and there's practically something for everyone there, including all sorts of stuff. How was this tweet retweeted? Was it liked? Was it forwarded? Was it commented on? You can get all sorts of information out of both the tweet itself and the author of the tweet, the follower of the tweet, etc. So all that stuff is in there. If you go to the Twitter URL that our instructor gave us, they have all that stuff in the API. You can just drill down to your heart's content if you want that kind of thing. So that's that. I would just, and I put this in the chat group, and then I promise I'll shut up. Twitter itself has a list, LIST is what it's called, function, where you can go in there and gather any group that you want to of accounts that might be interested. For example, I track all of the government officials in Uganda that have a Twitter account. And that puts it in a fixed list, which has a Twitter ID, and then I can use Tweepy to simply point to that ID and say this. Any tweets that have been authored, say in the last 7 days, by anyone in that list, I get an immediate download. It saves a huge amount of time, and so I'd encourage a lot of people, if you do this kind of repetitive work again and again, and you have a set number of accounts to use, it's really the way to go. It'll save you so much time. Okay, thanks.
No, thank you. That's really helpful. And while you were explaining that, yeah, you can get country code. So I put in the chat, and if you do Command F and just search for place.fields, you'll see then the list that you can use. Yeah, you can. Yeah, Neil, thank you for your worry about me sharing my credentials. I mean, I couldn't, I had to show all of you, but I will be deleting it. So nobody can use them. Okay, what other questions do you have? So we still have about 15 minutes. Anybody want to talk through a research project or how they might want to use Twitter data? Rodion, did you unmute yourself to talk? Or Luke or others?
I can actually talk a little bit about what we've been thinking out over here.
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
So this is Rich. I'm a postdoc over at the University of Hawaii, and I'm a member of an early response group here in the United States, a working group. And what we've been exploring is the use of remote support teams to support the work of peace teams that are active during protests to try to keep protesters safe. And we've been trying to figure out technological solutions to maximize their ability to provide situational awareness to on-the-ground teams. And right now, the current workflow is we have these remote support people, volunteers really, who will monitor a social media space and a social media ecosystem in the lead up and during a demonstration or an event. And we use that information, they're using that information to try to filter down what kind of actionable stuff can be used by peace teams on the ground to try to, you know, figure out where people can be, where perhaps escalatory sources are. And a lot of that information is coming through social media and Twitter, tweets and live streams and whatnot. So the reason I was thinking about geolocation data is because they've been struggling right now to try to connect that kind of information that is going through a single monitor or set of monitors or remote monitors to something that's actionable from a spatial awareness perspective. So trying to figure out like how many blocks away somebody is, or trying to figure out how many minutes you have before perhaps a group of Proud Boys are going to run into a group of Black Lives Matter protesters. So we're trying to figure out now whether the time granularity of tweets can be used, at least I'm trying to figure this out, as well as the spatial granularity is going to be whether, you know, if we can figure out the geolocation immediately of somebody's stream or somebody's tweet, if somebody tweets a picture of, say, a group of counter protesters, whether we can get that information into the hands of an analyst quick enough so that they can turn around and send that to the right on the ground team. So we're concerned then with the precision, the geolocation precision, but we're also concerned with the time. How, because this is really up to the second that we need. So I guess this leads into my next question is, working through the Twitter API, are we able to get to the time granularity of up to the second, or is there some kind of a lag, and how much of a lag can we expect?
I know you can pull from streaming, like I don't know if there's how big the lag is, but I would think it's not long. I'm actually looking up right now. There's a company called Banjo that does something quite similar. Just seeing if I can find, I hope they're still around, but essentially they would pull from different social media streams. Like if they all saw all of a sudden that a certain area, there were a lot of pictures being uploaded, they would look and analyze it and see, well, what's going on? Why is everybody taking a picture of this area at this exact moment? And so your work might be well aligned with their work and some of their methodologies. For example, one example, they were able to find that an Amazon warehouse was on fire before like firemen were alerted to it, because all of these people on a highway right next to it were taking pictures of the billowing smoke, and they knew that it was located there. So early detection of like these moments.
Yeah, absolutely. What's it called again?
They're called Banjo.
Banjo.
Like instrument, banjo. Banjo social media, but I'm not finding their website. I wonder if they're still in business. Anybody else hear about them? Oh yeah, here it is. It's this one. I got it. Okay, well, here's their Twitter account. Okay, their website, their site can't be reached. Looks good. But there's their Twitter account. Okay, and I saw a couple of questions. There was a question in 40. Oh, can you do this for terms that haven't been tagged, like haven't been hashtagged? Yes, you can search by just terms in Retrieve, but you want to be careful with that because you might cast your net too widely. You have to be careful with how you put in your terms to make sure that you're capturing exactly what you want to capture. Otherwise, you're just going to have a terrible time trying to sort through all of your data, all of your tweets, because you could cast the net too wide and capture a lot of noise that you don't want. But yeah, you can pull tweets that aren't, just from the key term, not from just a hashtag. Oh, Leo, go ahead.
Oh, hi. My name is Neil. I just thought of a question based on that conversation with Richard. Do you think it would be interesting to pull tweets to kind of say, to anticipate, okay, what group decides we're not going to use Twitter anymore to communicate and do all these things? Because I remember after during the riots in DC that when certain people got banned from Facebook and Twitter and things like that, they end up going to that Parler app. So would it be interesting to kind of see if a group decides, hey, people are kind of figuring us out from using Twitter. We're going to now be using this app where we are quote unquote free to do whatever we want.
Good question. Like, how do you, how do you monitor people who have moved off? But you could also see that happening if they're talking about it on Twitter. Like if people are saying, hey, let's move to Parler instead to mobilize. But yes, that's an issue. I don't have an answer for it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important point to raise, Neil. Especially like if people move to end-to-end encrypted apps like WhatsApp or Signal, mobilize, where we can't gain access to that data. We no longer do like open source intelligence because we can't access it. Important things to consider. Leo, would you like to talk about your work? You're looking at hate speech.
Oh, so for me, I'm actually the work that I do now has nothing to do with hate speech and misinformation, but this is an area that I've been interested in for a while. And so what I've just been looking at, kind of learning from different webinars, like how current leaders like yourself have been exploring this field. A few years ago at a hackathon, I did try to create a project where if you were trying to post something on Facebook and that an API would detect the level of toxicity of that post. And then my goal was that, okay, if Facebook were to detect that, they would give you a pop-up message saying, hey, we detect that it's like 98% toxic. Think about what you're going to post. But during the hackathon, I realized, okay, it wouldn't be possible unless I worked for Facebook and we made some big code changes. But yeah, that's kind of the closest I've done in the last few years, but I'm hoping to like explore other areas in this domain.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious if other people in the room have used any of those tools for identifying harassing language or hate speech. I know that there are many initiatives developed to do that and some of their experience with it. Because for our work, we actually hand coded every tweet and each tweet was coded by 2 coders. And then we did inter-coder reliability to make sure that there was agreement between coders. I'm curious if other people have used something like that. Nope. Maybe. Yes. You should just talk. You are now officially my co-instructor of this session. S. Davis, you should talk. I'd love to hear your experience.
Yeah, just ever, we all follow the news and there's so much fighting, unfortunately, going on in northern Ethiopia, and as a country riven by intertribal and ethnic violence. And unfortunately, the extremists in all those groups use slurs and hate speech and derogatory terms to attack each other, et cetera. And Twitter is awash in it. And so we've just come up with local people there, unfortunately, a list of common slurs and hate speech type things, and then pull Twitter data general, like our instructor mentioned, current time, and then just accumulate it and then run an analysis against it. And we can track the rise and fall of hate speech, often say in in synchronization. Say if a politician gets up and gives a speech on television or something, we can immediately watch hate speech go up or down based on that. Or if key anniversaries of dates of historical controversy or grievance come up, we can often track that are used. We did a lot of this in Myanmar or Burma as well, tracking hate speech and how it's used around the country by different Burmese factions, frankly, to whip up the worst kind of hatred against their fellow Burmese. So there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, your experience is really insightful. How do you take into like the contextual cues? Because the use of a slur is not always used in hate speech, right? It can be used by the community, like taken over by the community to like take the power over that.
I totally understand that. And there's stuff that's used casually and other times. That's a good point, but we work with, of course, local Ethiopians. The other thing, and you'll find this in Twitter, is one of the wonderful things about it is that you can track within local language. So for those familiar with Ethiopia, the national language is called Amharic or Amharinia, and there's also another language in the north where the fighting is called Tigray or Tigrinya. You can track those languages using their script, and often I'm much more, me personally, but anyone could have different ones, interested what Ethiopians are saying to each other in their own language, and that actually has connotations, and you can derive from that, whereby if stuff is written in English, it's often written specifically for a foreign audience, say for foreign press people, and it's as important to track, but you understand there's different connotations there, et cetera. So the ability to track and capture the data, and you can do that as part of the API, say, I only want Amharic script, and then I run this, and then again, I'm tooting my little horn here, but it's just the stuff that I've learned to do. Anyone who wants to use the Google API, there is a Google script, that like their sort of version of Excel for people who use Google Docs, that does an in-time, real-time translation of English or any other language you want to. There's some 180 languages, including Tigrinya. So you can take Tigray script or Amharic script, put it in and run it automatically against an English translation, and then run it there, and then get a consistent readout on hate speech in context. So all that stuff is free and publicly available. We've done a lot of it. Yep.
Do you find that using the Google API for language translation is very good? We used it a few years ago, which I imagine it's advanced significantly since then.
I don't know if it has or hasn't. I mean, your point is absolutely good, and there's also Microsoft has made some real gains with it as well. I'm too lazy to look at it, but that's worth swapping over. What our issue the reason I stuck with it is free and available. And secondly, I kind of don't care if it's specific as long as it's consistent. So if the same word is used in the same way and Google Translate is the same time, I can then key off that. And so I'm kind of using its failures a little bit to my advantage, by saying if a word is translated in such a way, even if it's translated in a benign way. I'll just give one example. There's a term that translates into English from Burmese. It's called white rose, which to you and I just sounds like a normal flower. It's nice. That has distinct, almost bitter historical connotations for certain tribal groups in Burma. And any one of them will know, oh, this person is trying to whip up racial hatred here. So I would never recognize that. The beauty of Google is that it always translates it as white rose. I'm able to key on that. So for that reason, we still found it useful, though it misses, of course, all kinds of contextual stuff.
Yeah, but one thing you hit on there that's really important, you have to have partners who know that context.
Right, absolutely. It would be a fool's errand for me to start wading into that and thinking I knew what I was reading. Exactly right.
Exactly. Well, we have, about a minute left. I hope that this was helpful for all of you to be able to at least get started on pulling some tweets from Twitter's API. I showed today how to do it with a handle and with a hashtag. We shared also the Twitter developer site where you can go and look for different fields that you can pull. You can do quite a bit with Twitter's API. I hope that this has encouraged many of you to dip your toe in and try to wade into the Twitter pool and pull some tweets. But thank you so much for joining. Thank you all for your questions and engagement today.